Thank you very much. It's good to remember that you have two alternatives: either be a dictator with your group as a leader. The moment you become a dictator, you will see your followers falling off one by one. And we say that if you are going to have friends among the people you are leading, you must not treat them like subordinates. There's no way a subordinate and senior person can be friends. It is when people feel they are appreciated for who they are, they finally become friends. And once they are your friends, like we said last meeting, they will work with you very well in seeking to reach the objective of the group. Today we want to talk about a leader and handling of emergencies. The first thing I want to say is that you can't be a leader for long before you have to handle something unexpected, an emergency. The question is, how do you handle it? How do you prepare for it? Is our discussion today. Let me tell you, there are two types of people. There's a pessimist and an optimist. If you are an optimist, you find it very difficult to start assuming there can be an emergency. No. I'm a Christian. It will never happen. What's wrong with you? Why are you being negative? Whenever you try to ask him to think about what could go wrong, he thinks there's something wrong with you. You lack faith. When people talk to you like that, we call them optimists. They never see any possibility, however remote, of any emergency happening in their project. The danger of such a view is the fact that since it will still come, when it comes, he as a leader and the group are totally unprepared. If an emergency comes when you are totally unprepared, what happens? You start getting confused. You can't think. Remember, now you're supposed to think harder than usual because this is not a usual matter. But your mind is confused. And that's why you end up seeing when an emergency happens, it will destroy optimists because of the way they approach things. They have not thought through, they do not know what to do, and it can be chaotic. So as a leader, my friend, don't be an optimist. Somebody who always thinks that everything must go right and nothing must go wrong. Other leaders become pessimists. Again, you will see what happens. A pessimist is a person who never sees anything happening. He assumes there will be emergencies continuously. I will not be able to handle the emergency. When you are such a leader, you can hardly ever take risks. And you can hardly ever lead your people to big achievements. Because big achievements will mean big risks. And you can't go on a big risk. When you already believe it will not happen, you will fail. A pessimist cannot be a good leader. Now that, especially in handling emergencies, because when it happens, I knew it was going to happen. And because of this feeling continuously, he never has passion. He never is too involved in what's happening. He is giving up. At the very sign of an emergency, he gives up. So his project will never succeed. So what can you be? As a leader, if you are going to handle emergency, you must be a realist. Not an optimist, not a pessimist, but a realist. Who is a realist? A realist is a person who considers what the optimist considers, but doesn't believe it must happen. It's the only thing that will happen. He considers what the pessimist will consider, but he doesn't say it's the only one that will happen. So he looks for a realistic way of approaching the future. So you assume some emergencies can happen, but you believe he can overcome them. And that's a very, very important thing that you need to be aware of, even as you approach leadership. Let me repeat. There is no such a leader who does not have to face emergencies. Every leader faces emergency. The difference is, if you are an optimist, you will not prepare for it. If you're a pessimist, you have no energy to face it. If you're a realist, you'll have a program, proactive program, that analyzes what kind of emergencies could arise, number one. What could stop happening? What can you do to reduce the possibility of it happening? Number three, in case it actually finally happens, what is the ERS, Emergency Response Plan? What can you do? The emergency already happened. What can you do to reduce its impact? And those only realists can actually do that kind of job. And it's important to ask yourself whether that's what you are. David was, number one, he already was telling Jonathan earlier, the way I'm watching your father, I need to prepare for a possible emergency with him trying to kill me. So when it actually happens, David had already seen it coming. Jonathan had kept saying, no, I don't think my father can do it. But it means David had thought through what could happen. And I want to see the story of this emergency where the king now has declared he's after the blood of this young boy, and he has to run away. He is involved in a life or death kind of emergency. Just look at 1 Samuel chapter 21. Verse 1 talks about David went to Nob, to Ahimelech, the priest. Ahimelech trembled when he met him and asked, why are you alone? Why is no one with you? Wow. That's something that worried the priest. He knew there must be something, because David was a military man. He normally moved around with the soldiers. David answered Ahimelech, the priest, the king sent me on a mission and said to me, no one is to know about anything about the mission I'm sending you on. As for me, my men, I've told them to meet me at a certain place. Now, then, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever you can find. If you have to prepare for emergency, one of the things you have to think about is, if an emergency happened and it will take time to resolve the emergency, what are people going to eat? Food provision is critical requirement as properly prepare for an emergency. For example, maybe you are in logistics and there has been a road accident in Nakuru and you're in Nairobi. You drive all the way there. Then it takes you more than 20 hours to actually sort out the matter there. My friend, if you have not eaten for even 10 hours, your thinking capacity will go down and you might not be able to sort out emergency. But if you have thought about it in advance, it means you normally pack some biscuits and some water somewhere. And as you jump into your car to run to resolve the emergency, you will throw some water and some biscuits into your vehicle. These are things that can last quite some time. And you'll be able to go through 20 hours, 24 hours without ever needing to stop, because you have prepared yourself. So my friend, as a leader, when you are thinking about an emergency, do you think about where is the hotel? Where could if there was an accident around Kericho, is there a hotel there? Is there a hospital there? Is there, what are the issues there? If my operation is in Nairobi and something was to happen around Isili, where would I go? What are the shortest roads? And what would I be eating as I sort out the matter? That's something that you have to think about. You can see David immediately knew once the emergency happened, he needs food. Unfortunately, the thing was so sudden that he could not find a place with food. So he actually goes to the priest and says, since he knows in the temple there are always, or in the tabernacle, there's always some bread which was required. He says, priest, Ahimelech, just give me the bread. Food provision you need to think about. Look at verse 4. But the priest answered David, I don't have any ordinary bread on hand. However, there is some consecrated bread here, provided the men have kept themselves from women. David replied, indeed, women have been kept from us, as usual, whenever I set out. The men's bodies are holy, even on missions that are not holy. How much more today? So the priest gave him the consecrated bread, since there was no bread there except the bread of the presence that had been removed from before the Lord and replaced by hot bread on the day it was taken away. What are we learning? During an emergency, you don't deal with niceties. You must sacrifice niceties and deal with something that will help the group to survive, that will help to save lives, if it's people's lives are at risk. Let me put it differently. During a war, birthday parties are suspended. Even if the king's son birthday is tomorrow and war is declared, that boy will have to go without a birthday party. Now you need to ask yourself, if you are a leader, what are the basic minimums, the irreducible, like some Mauritanians talk about, the irreducible minimum in handling a crisis? And then don't waste time with excess. Just deal with those minimums. That way you can concentrate on what really matters for survival of the organization or survival of the people involved in the emergency. So David has to survive in running away. So he needs some food. Otherwise, if he is going very far, he could die along the way. So he deals with the issue of food. Look at verse 7. Now one of Saul's servants was there that day, detained before the Lord. He was Doeg the Edomite, Saul's chief shepherd. Wow! He was going to the priest because that way he's running away from where people are, only to find the Saul's chief shepherd. That's a senior person. He is running away from Saul, but ending up with the presence of an enemy. In fact, later, because of this enemy, he went and told Saul that the priest and David are in cahoots. They are together. And actually Saul killed the priest. David later says, I knew it. When I saw Doeg there, I knew the life of the priest was going to be in trouble. What I'm trying to say is, although I'm encouraging you, like David, to be prepared for emergencies, the biggest item you require in preparation is prayer. Praying to God, because even after you have prepared everything, even after you thought about what can go right, what can go wrong, there will be things that go right, and you never imagine they could go right. They could go wrong. My friend, you need to trust yourself into God's hands, even when you face the friend of your enemy. Because that's a risk, a very big risk. And he had not prepared for it. It's not something most likely he had imagined would happen. So you need to understand prayer is a very important item in preparation for emergency. You know, it is in prayer that God will help you not to be traumatized. It is in prayer that God will help you to think right. It's in prayer that God will give you a team of people that clearly indicate God's favor is on you. So prayer is important as part of preparing as a leader. Look at verse 8. David asked Abimelech, don't you have a spear or a sword here? I haven't brought my sword or any other weapon, because the king's mission was urgent. The priest replied, the sword of Goliath, the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here. It is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you want it, take it. There is no sword here but that one. David said, there is none like it. give it to me. We are still learning about David's thought process in preparing for the emergency. I now have food. The next thing is security and safety. This is a very important thing to think about. Even if you are doing, however, risky an issue, one of the items must be safety. How can you ensure that people do not get hurt and nobody dies as you do your project? It is something that you must be clear about. Security and safety are important in any emergency. And it will be important that you think about, yes, I want to do this. You know, if you don't think right, you can go rescuing people and you end up dying. For example, if you go to a site where you are trying to rescue people out of a petroleum accident and you go there smoking, you will be dead. But even the people you are trying to save will all burn in the petroleum fire. So do not carelessly go to a rescue operation, not thinking about your own safety and the safety of the people that you are trying to rescue. Security and safety are important in an emergency. So as you prepare, that's something that you need to think about very clearly. Then verse 10, that day David fled from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servant of Achish said to him, isn't this David, the king of the land? Isn't he the one they sing about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Can you imagine? David is running away from King Saul. Where does he go? To Philistine, the enemy territory. And we learn a lesson in that process. The best place to hide from your enemy is to go to his enemy. Because the enemy of your enemy is your friend. And that's why he actually went there. So you need to think about, even as you relate, dealing with an emergency. Who are the people likely to help me? Who are not the people who can help me? How can I ensure that I don't endanger my life, even as I do the operations I'm undertaking? And finally, verse 12 says, David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Achish, king of Gath. Which words? Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. That means, even among these people, they know that David should be a friend of Saul. What is he doing among us? He must be a spy. And so, where he had gone becomes a risk. What does David do? He starts behaving funny. You need to understand that if you're a leader, you must see more than other people's eyes can see. And you must hear more than other ear are hearing. The king, even after hearing this, is not really that bothered. But David knows that information has implications. As a leader, do you hear what people are hearing? Or do you hear more than the people are hearing? Do you read between the lines? Do you see more than people are seeing? Do you understand why somebody is dressed like this? What are the implications? Finally, verse 13. So he pretended to be insane in their presence, and while he was in their hands, he acted like a madman, making marks on the doors of the gate and letting saliva run down his beard. Now that he knows that where he came as a solution is not right, again he thinks quickly what to do. He behaves a madman. That way he cannot be asked questions. You can't ask a madman questions. Therefore, he cannot end up telling something that you should not tell. Communicate what you want the enemy to hear. That does not mean you lie. It means that you can give the information that is innocent without giving the information that can jeopardize you. It is wrong to lie, so it is better to withhold information than to end up lying. And at times being thought a fool is an advantage. You know what he said to his servants? Look at the man. He is insane. Why bring him to me? And am I short of madmen that you have to bring this fellow here to carry on like this in front of me? May this man come into my house? What is saying? David has made himself a fool. And there is a time when you being thought a fool will get you out of trouble. May the Lord bless us and help us. As we think about leadership, I'm not thinking about leadership tomorrow. You are in your family. What are the issues you can do to prepare for an emergency? You are in your workplace. What can you do to prepare for an emergency? Maybe you are a student. What can you do to prepare for emergency? That way you will help everybody who is with you wherever you are. Thank you very much. William, the meeting is back to you.